Hello, welcome back. This is Kim Wade from Inner Gaze Yoga. If you are enjoying these videos, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and you'll get notified whenever a new video comes out. And if you particularly like this video or any of the videos, whenever you hit the like button, it lets me know what you want to see more of. So it's a way that we can communicate. If you like this sort of direction and hearing more about this sort of thing, just hit like on this video and then I'll know that you're wanting to see more of this. As always, my hope and work is to serve you. And so let me know how I can best do that. Okay. So again, we are in chapter 2 today of Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. And for those of you who are struggling with trauma, childhood trauma or, even past childhood trauma, this is some really wonderful tools of how not only you can show up for your own self-care, but how you can communicate to the people that are around you. Very, very, very nice book, okay, by Pete Walker. So sit back, grab some water, and let's dive into chapter 2. Chapter 2, Levels of Recovering. Healing from complex PTSD is, above all, complex. This is important to emphasize because there are numerous one-dimensional approaches to trauma that bill themselves as cure-alls. In my opinion, however, singular approaches are unable to address all the levels of wounding that combine to cause CPTSD. Moreover, working with simplistic approaches can leave you stranded in toxic shame when you do not achieve the touted results. I was motivated to write this book in large part because of the many times I sank into new levels of self-contempt when the latest panacea therapy did not cure me. I will use the word key repeatedly to describe the various tasks upon which recovering hinges. This book offers a keychain of perspectives and techniques to unlock yourself from being what Alice Miller called a prisoner of childhood. Abusive and abandoning parents can injure and abandon us on all many levels: cognitive, emotional, spiritual, physical, and relational. To recover, you need to learn how to support yourself, to meet your unmet developmental needs on each level that is relevant to your experience of childhood trauma. This chapter is a brief overview of the many tasks involved in CPTSD recovery. These tasks are explored at greater length in part 2. The comprehensive table of contents at the beginning of this book will direct you to further information on each of the topics discussed in this chapter. Please allow yourself to also use the table of contents to explore sections of the book that pique your interest. Key developmental arrests in CPTSD. What follows now is a list of some of the most common developmental arrests that occur in CPTSD. You may find that you experience a diminishment or absence of these key features of healthy human being. Typically, survivors will vary on which and how many of these arrests relate to them. Factors affecting this are your 4F type, your childhood abuse, neglect pattern, your innate nature, and any recovery work that you have already accomplished. Number 1, self-acceptance. 2, clear sense of identity. 3, self-compassion. 4, self-protection. 5, capacity to draw comfort from relationship. 6, ability to relax. 7, capacity for full self-expression. 8, willpower and motivation. 9, peace of mind. 10, self-care. 11, belief that life is a gift. 12, self-esteem. 13, self-confidence. My efforts to nurture myself in these arrested areas of development were limited and spoiled in early recovery by feeling of resentment. Why do I have to do this? Was a common internal refrain. Resentment that should have been directed towards my parents often boomeranged onto me and spoiled or thwarted my efforts at self-nurturance. Thankfully, ongoing recovery work also helped remedy this resentment. It taught me to practice self-care in a spirit of giving to a child who needed and really deserved to be helped. I find it helpful to approach developmental arrest from the viewpoint of novelist David Mitchell's quip that fire is the sun unwinding itself out of the wood. Similarly, effective recovery is unwinding the natural potential you were born with out of your unconscious. This is your innate potential, which may be as yet unrealized because of your childhood trauma. An especially tragic developmental arrest that afflicts many survivors is the loss of their willpower and self-motivation. Many dysfunctional parents react destructively to their child's budding sense of initiative. If this occurs throughout his childhood, the survivor may feel lost and purposeless in his life. He may drift through his own life rudderless and without a motor. Moreover, even when he manages to identify a goal of his own choosing, he may struggle to follow through with extended and concentrated effort. Remedying this developmental arrest is essential because many new psychological studies now show that persistence, even more than intelligence or innate talent, is the key psychological characteristic necessary for finding fulfillment in life. I have worked with many survivors stranded in this form of adult helplessness. Those who recover from it typically do so by engaging extensively in the angering work of grieving that is discussed throughout this book. The ability to invoke willpower seems to be allied to your ability to healthily express your anger. With sufficient recovering, you can learn to manufacture your volition. In the beginning, you can fake it until you make it. This is what Stephen Johnson calls the hard work miracle. What follows is a concluding comment about developmental arrests. Some survivors have confidence, but not self-esteem. In childhood, my own flight response got channeled into acquiring academic skills for which the outside world rewarded me. But the benefit of these rewards never penetrated my toxic shame enough to allow me to feel that I was a worthwhile person. My critic, like my parents, always found something flawed in me to contradict the feedback that I was getting. 99% on a test was never a cause for pride. Rather, it was the impetus for a great deal of self-criticism about missing that 1%. Like many other survivors that I've worked with, I developed the imposter syndrome. This syndrome contradicted the outside positive feedback that I was receiving. It insisted that if people really knew me, they would see what a loser I was. Eventually, however, I became confident in my intelligence, even though my self-esteem was still abysmal. Cognitive healing. The first level of recovery usually involves repairing the damage that CPTSD wreaks on our thoughts and beliefs about ourselves. Cognitive recovery work aims to make your brain user-friendly. It focuses on recognizing and eliminating the destructive thoughts and thinking processes that were indoctrinated within childhood. Cognitive healing also depends on learning to choose healthy and more accurate ways of talking to and thinking about yourself. On the broadest level, this involves upgrading the story you tell yourself about your pain. We need to understand exactly how appalling parenting created the now self-perpetuating trauma that we live in. We can learn to do this in a way that takes the mountain of unfair self-blame off ourselves. We can redirect this blame to our parents' dreadful child-rearing practices. And we can also do this in a way that motivates us to reject their influence so that we can freely orchestrate our own journey of recovering. This work then requires us to build a fierce allegiance to ourselves. Such loyalty strengthens us for the cognitive work of freeing our brains from being conditioned to attack so many normal parts of ourselves. Cognitive work is fundamental to helping you disidentify from the self-hating critic with which your parents inoculated you. As I'm writing this, my son's friend synchronistically tells him, "This Lego creature I made spreads brain attack and eats away at the person." I marvel at the synchronicity and think, what a fitting image for the trauma-inducing parent. Shrinking the critic. Early abuse and abandonment forces the child to merge his identity with the superego, the part of the child's brain that learns the rules of his caretaker in order to get and maintain acceptance. However, because acceptance is impossible in the CPTSD engendering family, the superego gets stuck working overtime to achieve the impossible. Perseverating on finding a formula to win over her parents, the child eventually embraces perfectionism as a strategy to make her parents less dangerous and more engaging. Her one hope is that if she becomes smart, helpful, pretty, and flawless enough, her parents will finally care for her. Sadly, continued failure at winning their regard forces her to conclude that she is fatally flawed. She is loveless, not because of her mistakes, but because she is a mistake. She can only see what is wrong with or missing in her. Anything she does, says, thinks, imagines, or feels has the potential to spiral her down into a depressed abyss of fear and toxic shame. Her superego fledges into a full-blown trauma-induced critic. Self-criticism then runs nonstop in a desperate attempt to avoid rejection-inducing mistakes. Drasticizing becomes obsessive to help the child foresee and avoid punishment and worsening abandonment. At the same time, it continuously fills her psyche with stories and images of catastrophe. The survivor becomes imprisoned by a jailer who will accept nothing but perfection. He is chauffeured by a hysterical driver who sees nothing but danger in every turn of the road. Chapter 9 and 10 focus extensively on practical tools for shrinking your critic. The developmentally arrested, healthy ego. Over time, the critic becomes more and more synonymous with the survivor's identity. The superego morphs into a totalitarian critic that trumps the development of a healthy ego. The ego develops later than the superego. Ego, contrary to popular usage, is not a dirty word. In psychology, the term ego represents what we typically mean when we use terms like myself or my identity. The healthy ego is the user-friendly manager of the psyche. Unfortunately, CPTSD-inducing parents thwart the growth of the ego by undermining the development of the crucial egoic processes of self-compassion and self-protection. They do this by shaming or intimidating you whenever you have a natural impulse to have sympathy for yourself or stand up for yourself. The instinct to care for yourself and to protect yourself against unfairness is then forced to become dominant. Psychoeducation and cognitive healing. Becoming the psychoeducated about CPTSD is the first level of addressing this poisonous indoctrination of your mind against your healthy ego. When you intricately understand how antagonistic your parents were to your healthy sense of self, you become more motivated to engage in the self-help processes of rectifying their damage. The more you identify their damage, the more you know what to fix. This is essential because without a properly functioning ego, you have no center for making healthy choices and decisions. All too often, your decisions are based on the fear of getting in trouble or getting abandoned, rather than on the principles of having meaningful and equitable interactions with the world. You can learn to gradually replace the critic's toxic perspective with a viewpoint that supports you in your life and that stops you from unnecessary scaring yourself. You are free now as an adult to develop peace of mind and a supportive relationship with yourself. A self-championing stance can transform your existence from struggling survival to a fulfilling sense of thriving. You can begin right now by inviting your instincts of self-compassion and self-protection to awaken and bloom in your life. Cognitive healing may have begun or been reinforced by reading what has preceded this. Hopefully, you are having some epiphanies about what is the core of your suffering. Some readers have been searching for cognitive answers for years, and through their reading and therapy already created a sizable foundation for doing this work. At the same time, those who have only tried a cognitive behavioral approach, CBT, to healing their trauma may feel great resistance to hearing that cognitive work is important. If you are like me, you may have been introduced to it in a way that promised more than could be delivered. Cognitive tools are irreplaceable in healing cognitive issues, but they do not address all the levels of our wounding. They are especially limited in addressing emotional issues, as we will see below. In early recovery, the psychoeducation piece of cognitive work typically comes from the wisdom of others, teachers, writers, friends, and therapists who are more informed on the subject than we are. When psychoeducation reaches its most powerful level of effectiveness, however, it begins to morph into mindfulness. Mindfulness. Psychologically speaking, mindfulness is taking undistracted time to become fully aware of your thoughts and feelings so that you can have more choice in how you respond to them. Do I really agree with this thought, or have I been pressured into believing it? How do I want to respond to this feeling? Distract myself from it, repress it, express it, or just feel it until it changes into something else. Mindfulness is a perspective that weds your capacity for self-observation with your instinct of self-compassion. It is therefore your ability to observe yourself from an objective and self-accepting viewpoint. It is a key function of a healthily developed ego and is sometimes described as the observing ego or the witnessing self. Mindfulness is a perspective of benign curiosity about all of your inner experience. Recovery is enhanced immeasurably by developing this healthy process of introspection. As it becomes more developed, mindfulness can be used to recognize and disidentify from beliefs and viewpoints that you acquired from your traumatizing family. I cannot overstate the importance of becoming aware of your inner self-commentary. With enough practice, mindfulness eventually awakens your fighting spirit to resist the abusive refrains from your childhood and to replace them with thoughts that are self-supportive. Mindfulness also helps you to establish a perspective from which you can assess and guide your own efforts of recovering. Chapter 12 contains detailed instruction for enhancing mindfulness, as do the writings of Stephen Levine, Jack Kornfield, and John Kabat-Zinn. Finally, it is important to note that mindfulness tends to develop and expand in a progressive manner to all levels of our experience: cognitive, emotional, physical, and relational. Mindfulness is essential for guiding us at every level of recovering, and we will examine this principle more closely throughout this book. Okay, that's the end of chapter 2, part 1. I will see you in the next video. As always, may this work be of deep benefit to you, deep benefit. Thanks for watching. I see you.